As we welcome Douglas Carswell. He's the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Douglas, thanks for coming in. Good to see you.
Good morning, Gerard. Good morning, Mississippi.
Just saw you a couple of weeks ago down in New Orleans at the annual State Policy Network Conference, and well attended, as it always is, held down at the Sheraton on Canal Street. And we were just talking offline. I think this is the fourth one I've attended, and they move them around. This is the closest one has been where I could actually drive to it that I recall.
Me too.
But what's neat about that conference is that the policies that your organization promotes and have been promoting for quite some time that are certainly grounded in freedom and free markets and limited government, low taxes, minimal regulation, all the above. When you go to that conference, what you're attending with is a bunch of organizations just that are chasing the same policies, I should say, in all 50 states.
Well, it's a real reminder, isn't it, when you're there, that all the great policy innovations tend to come from the states.
That's right.
Income tax elimination here in Mississippi. You've got school choice in Alabama and Arkansas. You've got deregulation in Texas. It's a real reminder that actually America is the United States, and each state doing things differently means you get these fantastic new ideas. And you said we all tend to do the same thing. We steal from each other, basically. We see what one state does right, and we do it. We see what one state like California does wrong on something like energy, and we don't do it. It's the secret of America's success, and it was lovely to be there. A couple of thousand policy people from different states, and it was really inspiring to listen to and be part of that real energy there. America's going to be in good hands so long as it's got states being able to do their own thing.
It is kind of refreshing and it's energizing, because sometimes you may feel like you're kind of isolated a bit and you're maybe out on a limb and you're trying to push the rope uphill and all that sort of stuff. But you get in the rooms with these people. There's lots of breakout sessions as well, as you well know, of all across the gambit of subject matter. These are really smart people. That's the first thing that I took away when I attended the first one. It was in Atlanta several years ago. These are really smart people. Yeah. They're passionate. They care about what they're doing. They know that their work is making a difference. They get great satisfaction out of that. But, man, they don't stop. They get a little victory, and boom, we keep on going. Yep. And speaking of victories, your organization, the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, was recognized in a big way at the awards dinner, I believe on Wednesday night at the conference. There were 800 people in the room from across the country. You were up on the stage there receiving an award. Tell us about that.
Well, we were one of two organizations up on the stage. The other was our sister organization, Empower Mississippi. And the two of our organizations, Mississippi Center for Public Policy and Empowerment Mississippi, were getting an award basically on behalf of Team Mississippi for income tax elimination. Our state is the first state to eliminate the income tax since oil-rich Alaska in 1980. Now, of course, Florida and Texas and Tennessee don't have the income tax, which is one of the reasons why they're doing so well. But we're the first state that had an income tax to get rid of it. Yeah. And it was great to get that recognition, and it was great for Mississippi to get that recognition. I should say, in the 2 minutes I had to accept the award, I think there were other people that actually should have been on stage. I think Starla Brown from AFP Mississippi, fantastic job. I praised Speaker Jason White. I didn't have time to mention everyone, but Speaker Jason White, his leadership made it possible. Trey Lamar, it wouldn't have happened without him. He really spearheaded the income tax elimination. And then, of course, we're standing on the shoulders of the guys who made the income tax reforms of 2022. And in a weird way, I think Philip Gunn should have been on stage. Trey Dellinger, I think his advisor should have been on stage. My good friend, Russ Latino, I think should have been on stage. So it was really Mississippi getting the award, but it was lovely to be up there and have that applause. And so often Mississippi is thought of as being 50th out of 50. And so often people think of Mississippi as being last. And it was lovely to be in a room full of people from across America seeing Mississippi actually leading and coming first.
Yeah, I agree. That was the takeaway I had from it as well, is that it's so neat to see Mississippi on a big stage like that, being recognized for efforts in this area. And, of course, there are a lot of people in that room that would love to accomplish what was accomplished here in elimination of the income tax. And what's always fascinating to me, Douglas, is you talk to folks that, again, think like we do and share a conservative philosophy and slate of conservative values. But, man, they're in states where it's really difficult to get stuff done in some of these deep blue states. It just won't happen.
I was talking to someone who runs a think tank in the Northeast, and forget it. I mean, they're trying to get people to reduce the size of government who believe passionately in big government. You imagine being a conservative in California. It's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is how often it's a Southern success story. You see, and I don't want to, no disrespect to other think tanks in other states, but it tends to be the South that is leading on tax cuts, deregulation, doing all the right things. And, of course, that's why I think we're seeing the South doing so well. But, yeah, it's great to be part of it. Great group of people. State Policy Network, one of those organizations that we don't hear enough about, but actually does some incredibly important things right across the country.
And as you can see, you have great leadership involved as well in the State Policy Network. But big night for Mississippi, and congratulations to you. And you're right. There are a lot of other people that had a hand of ultimately getting that across the finish line, starting even back with the governor, Tate Reeves, when he championed as lieutenant governor, going to a flat tax, right?
And he made it his number one priority for the 2025 session. It wouldn't have happened without that. I mean, there's that old cliche that, success has many fathers, failure is an orphan. It's lovely to have lots and lots of people involved. It wouldn't have happened if any one of the coalition, from Tate Reeves to Philip Garner, hadn't been pushing. It wouldn't have happened.
Totally true. So something that you guys have been focused on quite a bit, and a subject we've discussed often on the program. We may run out of time in this segment. We'll continue it on the other side of the break, and that is, of course, education freedom, school choice, that feels like it's getting some momentum. I mean, this is something that I know I've been working on for about a dozen years now to try to get something meaningful done. We've scratched the surface a bit with our dyslexia program and special needs programs, but we're still falling way short of universal school choice, which would be the ultimate goal. Tell us about that.
I think it's going to happen, and the reason I think it's going to happen is because Mississippi is now surrounded by states that have school choice. If we were having this conversation in Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, or Tennessee, you as a parent could write to the local school, or the Department of Education, and say, I want to have my child's $7,000 paid into an education savings account. And that means you as the family could then allocate those dollars to a school of your choice. The very fact that we're starting to see that in all the states around us, I think, means it's inevitable. It's going to come here. The question is, how can we do it? And how can we do it in a way that addresses some legitimate concerns that people have? But I think, Speaker White has put it top of the agenda, and I think it's going to happen. Yeah,
it feels like it. Certainly, there were a conference that he held a couple of weeks ago, had a couple of folks from the Trump administration, the president, is a big supporter of school choice. Of course, the education secretary, how refreshing, is working diligently to shut down the Department of Education. That's not something you see very often in politics, where a high-ranking bureaucrat, if you will, and I wouldn't call her a bureaucrat, but typically in that role you're going to have bureaucrats that are all about protecting their fiefdoms and their domain. But she makes no bones about it. I'm here to actually dismantle the Department of Education.
And it's worth remembering, the Department of Education was created at a federal level by Jimmy Carter. No conservative president, including Reagan, including the two Bushes, dared get rid of it until now. And it's wonderfully refreshing to see.
Yeah. So I think we're well on our way to getting something done. What that ultimately, finally will look like remains to be seen, but I agree. It feels like there's more interest and more support. I know I've had some private conversations with members of the legislature that are under the impression that there are lots of drawbacks to school choice, and that concerns them. But many of those, I think, are not grounded in fact. on the other side of the break, I'm going to let you address some of those. We've got Douglas Carswell. Yes. He's the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy in the Element Wealth Studio. Coming right back. Studio, we're visiting with Douglas Carswell. He's the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. So on the C Spire text line, something we hear a lot, Douglas, but Mississippi hasn't eliminated the income tax. Well, we put the wheels in motion to do so. The legislation has been passed that will, in fact, eliminate the income tax over a period of time. I think it's being done responsibly and thoughtfully and methodically. We certainly could eliminate it on a shorter time frame, but honestly, that would likely necessitate increasing taxes, specifically the sales tax, which is a chief source of revenue of the state.
It's a fair point when someone says you haven't actually eliminated it yet.
Yeah.
That's right. We structured the proposal to eliminate it in a way. I mean, Mississippi has about $7 billion worth of tax revenue. About $2 billion of that comes from income tax. So if you're going to phase that out, get rid of the $2 billion out of the 7, you have to do it over time, unless you want to increase taxes elsewhere, by allowing for growth. And I think that's what we do. Up until 2030, the reduction will be in small increments of 0.25 percentage point, from 4% down to 3%. After 2030, further reductions will be contingent upon there being a budget surplus. There are so-called tax triggers in there.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for that is we want to avoid what happened in Kansas, where a bunch of passionate conservatives got in and said, right, let's get rid of the tax. They got rid of the tax, and then what are we going to do to pay the bills? You've got to understand that, and you've got to create a system for phasing out the income tax that doesn't put you in hot water. And I think we've done that.
Yeah, I think it's overall is a good plan. Honestly, I would have been okay if we would have eliminated it in a shorter time frame. But that, honestly, I think would have required something that most people oppose, including me, which would probably be raising the sales taxes, because that's our primary source of revenue.
Absolutely. It's going to take fiscal discipline, though. What we need are lawmakers who, I think for the first time in a long time, 2025 was actually a conservative budget. The growth in spending was sensible, in line with inflation. So what we need to do is make sure that we keep that fiscal discipline. If politicians go mad with the money, there won't be enough money for tax cuts. But if they keep to sensible spending controls, we will phase out the income tax within 7 to 8 years.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're in good shape there. So let's talk about school choice, return to that subject. I know that you guys appear to have made that a high priority. And, you know, there have been some false starts on that, shall we say, in terms of legislation. Last year had a universal school choice bill, I believe the year before, that we couldn't get out of the House. But we did have Representative Jansen Owen's bill, which would have established what's called open enrollment.
1435, yeah.
Right. I remembered as well. How could we forget that? Some bills you can remember the number because we talk about them so much, and they're so pivotal in their influence and their impact. But that's right, 1435. It would have essentially prohibited the homeschool when there is a request for a transfer to a different public school from blocking said transfer. It does require, under present law, approval by both the transfer-or school and the transfer-e school. But right now, more times than none, it rarely happens because they know, the transfer-or school is going to block it. His bill would have simply said, no, you can't do that anymore. That passed in the House. It failed. It didn't even get. It got pocket vetoed. Senator Dennis DeBar. We've talked about him many times. He's the committee chairman of education in the Senate. You think we could get at a minimum that done this year? Where does the Senate stand on that in your view?
I wonder if actually we should be more ambitious and go for full-on school choice. And the reason is because maybe the sticking point is so-called public-to-public school choice. Maybe that might be where we can compromise. Okay. But there are a number of stumbling blocks. Some people in the legislature object to school choice for illegitimate reasons. Simply that they're terrified of their school superintendent giving them a hard time, and the school superintendent doesn't want to hand over control of the budget to the parents. Right. But there are some legitimate concerns. One legitimate concern is people saying, what about the Constitution? Well, that shouldn't be a legitimate concern anymore because it's quite clear that there's nothing in our Constitution to prohibit it. Another stumbling block is, what if you have school choice and you have a flood of kids coming into my kid's school district? Isn't that going to cause problems? Well, that's why we need to draft the legislation that says actually school districts need to be able to define capacity. School districts need to be able to say, we've got maximum capacity for this number of kids, we're prioritizing kids from our district, and that's that. And I would say you've got to go even further. You've got to give individual schools the power to reject transferees with a history of disciplinary problems. I think that's good conservative policy. But what is any of this got to do with someone currently in the public school system, dissatisfied with the education their kids are getting, who says, give me my $7,000 so I can go to a non-government school? How can you possibly object to that on the grounds of capacity? So I would like us to come back to this and not just have public-to-public school choice with caveats for capacity. Allow people to take their money to any school of their choice. And I think, that's what they do in all the neighboring states. Why can't we do that here?
So, the objections there from the most typical one, the most common one is, well, I don't want to see public money being used to and transferred to a private entity. I don't want to see public money being used.
Do you say that with food stamps?
No, I agree. Well, not only that, but as you know, the public sector at all levels of government spends money with the private sector across a wide range of areas.
Think what giving every family in Hinds County control over their child's $7,000 would do to education in Hinds County. We have a number of schools in Hinds County which the local education authorities are constantly reviewing to see which ones they can shut down because no one wants to attend them. If you gave families control over their $7,000, I think you would see a flourishing of new providers. Schools like Redeemer School, schools like Vineyard Church's local school.
Yeah.
These would be start-up private schools offering the education that families wanted. Now, you can't have it both ways. You can't say there's nothing wrong with our public education system and it's all doing fine and dandy, and then turn around and say, hey, we can't let people have choice because they might want to escape from the system they've got. I wouldn't think that people in America would tolerate being told where they have to go and buy groceries based on their zip code. Why do we force them to go and get their kids send their kids to a public school without choice? It seems profoundly un-American to me.
That seems to be, again, the most frequent objection that I hear, including from the lieutenant governor, who's been known to say in the past that he just doesn't agree with the idea of public money being spent with private organizations, but they're providing a service.
Yeah, well, I look forward to him advocating that we phase out people using their food stamps in privately owned supermarkets. I mean, it's a nonsense argument. The real argument, I think, and I don't want to be a controversialist here, but I think the real argument is that if electorally you rely on the support of the teacher unions, you don't want to challenge them. But I think we've got to ask a fundamental question. If you are a Republican in Mississippi, are you on the side of parent power and Donald J. Trump who want school choice? Or are you on the side of progressive teacher unions? Take your pick.
And you're right. That's the other thing that we can absolutely assert at this point is that the president's made it very clear that he supports this policy 100%. And believes it ought to be a policy implemented nationwide.
100%.
Right?
I went up in April and had conversations with Team Trump, and they're absolutely on board with this. Look at how outspoken they were in Tennessee and Texas. Trump was tweeting, sending out messages saying, back this bill. I think it's really interesting how Speaker White seems to have the ear and the inside track from the Trump's administration. Look at the level of support given to advocate for this just the other week in the Select Committee hearing. So I think it's pretty clear what Team Trump wants. But more important than Team Trump is, what do Mississippi parents want? They want the best for their kids. Right, okay, give them the ability to pick a different school for their kid.
So to those who say that having school choice implemented, even the basic open enrollment, would bring down property values. This is another argument that I think is not grounded in fact, and we haven't seen that in any state that's implemented school choice. But you hear that, and I guess their theory is, well, we would allow students in that wouldn't perform as well, and that would bring the grade of the school down, and that would affect
Just look across the river at Arkansas where they have school choice. None of these arguments have come to pass. The sky hasn't fallen in. In fact, there's good evidence now that schools in Arkansas are making real progress. If Arkansas can do it, if the Razorbacks... I've only been in Mississippi 5 years, but I've been here long enough to know that if the Razorbacks can do it, we can do it too.
That's absolutely true. And Ole Miss will be taking on the Razorbacks this coming Saturday, the Vaught.
I'm looking forward to it.
Douglas Carswell has been our guest, President and CEO of Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Good to talk to you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Jared.
Yep.
Thanks.
We're stepping aside for a break. We're back with you in the Element Wealth